we're doing Unit 4, Study Guide, Objective 4, the review section. Okay, we're on question 13. This is an exponent property question. Now, you might want to say a times 3. Awesome, let's do it. But you got to make sure that you get rid of these outside exponents first. This is the exponent distributive property. Now, I know I told you in previous question that we can't distribute because there was a subtraction sign or an addition sign. But notice how there's no addition or subtraction. It's all multiplication in here. This allows us to distribute the 4. Now, there's a 1 here that's understood. So we get 8 to the 4th power. And then we get x to the 3 times 4. When we distribute, we multiply, which is 12. Okay? Down here, over here, we're going to distribute the negative 2. Remember, that has an understood 1, and this does too. So you get 3 to the negative 2, and x also to the negative 2. And remember, we're multiplying these two things. Now, we still cannot do 8 times 3 because they have exponents. Okay? And so, what we'll have to do is we'll have to figure out what they get us. But notice how we have negative exponents. We cannot have negative exponents. This means that they go to the bottom and become positive. Okay? When we say to the bottom of what? Well, there's always an understood fraction here over 1, right? Okay? Over anything. So we have an understood fraction bar. So that means that this whole term right here is going to move to the bottom and then have a positive 2 exponent, as well as this, because it has a negative exponent also. And so really, what we'll end up with is 8 to the 4th, x to the 12th, over 3 squared, x squared. Okay? So now we need to figure out with our numbers, what do these actually equal? So a to the 4th, if you type it in your calculator, is 4096. You get x to the 12th over 9x squared. Okay? And then we're going to take the x's and we're going to look at these. And we should be able to do 12 minus 2, because when you divide, you subtract. And so you get x to the 12 minus 2, which equals 12 minus 2 is 10. So you get x to the 10th. Where's the bigger number located? It's on top. So when we draw a new fraction bar, you get x to the 10th on top. Okay? Or it's positive when you subtract them, so it goes on top as well. Okay? Then you want to take your calculator and see if 4096 divided by 9 will reduce. And so you go 4096 divided by 9, and then you hit math to enter to see if it gives you a different fraction, and it won't, because it will not reduce, and that becomes your final answer. Okay? Moving on to question 14. Okay? Notice we have a parentheses and an exponent on the outside, so that's a distributive property or a multiplication property for exponents. So you'll take the x and you'll do 1/4 times negative 4, or 4 over 1, which equals x to the negative 4 over 4, which equals x to the negative 1. And notice how we have a negative exponent. We cannot have a negative exponent. So we have that understood over 1, which means we'll move it to the bottom like we did in our previous question and make it positive. Okay? So that comes down here, and then x to the 1 really is just x. And then if you have nothing else to put on top, you put a 1. And so ultimately you get down to this being your final answer. Very quick and easy question if you know what you're doing. Question 15. Okay, we'll go through and we'll look at this piece by piece. you want to look at the numbers first. You want to take 8 and 16 and divide them in your calculator, okay? And so 8 divided by 16 will reduce to 1 over 2, okay? Now, the property here, there's two ways you could think about it. Okay, I have a negative exponent. I need to move it to the bottom and put 4 down there. So, or you could think about it as negative 4 minus 6, which equals negative 10. Okay, or, and you look, it's really just 10, and it goes on the bottom. So you take negative 4, shift it to the bottom, and you have 6 down there. You bring 4 more down. That makes 10 down on the bottom. Or you get a negative 10 when you subtract them, and that means really a bottom 10. So either way, we have 10 axis on the bottom. Okay, this one's a little bit trickier because it's really telling you to move. You want to put the y to the 10th up here, and bring the y to the 6th down here. Okay, or you could do negative 6 minus negative 10. Make sure you put both negatives in there, and then that gives you a plus. Okay, and you get negative 6 plus 10 is positive 4. And if you look here, when we move them, that's 10 minus 6, which is 4. And the bigger one technically is the top one, so it'll be 4 on the top. Okay? And then do we really need this 1 right here? Not really, because we have a y there. So ultimately, this becomes our final answer. Okay? So now, solve the following equation for x. So this is a literal equation. You're not going to get a final answer that's a 1. So we look for our target variable. That's the x right there. And we need to figure out, well, what do we need to do to get rid of the stuff that's around the x? You want to do the opposite of whatever is doing to x. So if you do that, then you look, and you have 1 divided by 3 times x, or 1/3 x. Well, what's the opposite of dividing by 3? You multiply by 3. So what we'll do is we'll times by 3 to both sides to get rid of that. Okay? So the 3's cancel here, and 1 times x is just x. Okay? And then the z1 plus the z2 will come down, equals, and what's 3 times y? 3y. That's right. Okay? So now, remember, our target variable's right here, the x. What's happening to x? It's being multiplied by z1 plus z2. So how do you get rid of multiplying by z1 plus z2? You divide by z1 plus z2. Well, if you divide this side by z1 by z plus z2, you divide this side by z1 plus z2. Okay? And so you get 3y z1 plus z2 equals, and then z1 plus z2 divides, and that's your final answer. This concludes the objective 4 for your study guide. Please move on to the next video for more questions.